Most of the lumps and bumps in my lawn I'm going to be taking out in a couple of weeks' time when I do my whole lawn levelling, but I've got a couple that are that bad they really need special attention. So today I'm going to show you how I sort out a really bad depression in your lawn. This is the worst hole that I've got in my lawn at the moment, and it's very obvious when you're walking around that you could actually trip over it, especially if children were playing in the garden. I decided to measure it, and it comes out to 125 mil or 5 inches deep at the centre, which is quite huge really. It also extends out at least a couple of foot in each direction, sort of in a circle. The centre of this has no grass in it at all, it's just a bald patch. So whether it was a molehill and that's why it's depressed in this area, I really don't know. But anyway, time to try to sort this out ahead of the general lawn levelling. The first thing I decide to do is to cut the grass, so at least I can see what I'm dealing with. Although this depression is actually difficult to cut because it's such a depression. I'm using my Alec Kensington cylinder mower here, which isn't nearly as clean as when I first bought it. It's obviously already seen quite a bit of action in the first part of spring and will do over the whole of this summer. Even as I mow in the better areas, you can see the lawnmower bouncing up and down a little bit, and this is why I really need to do this lawn levelling as soon as possible. Especially where I go down this depression. The lawnmower just goes down and up and doesn't really cut in the centre of it because it can't get that low. At this time of year the grass is really growing nicely, the weather's getting warmer and there's still plenty of moisture in the soil, so I do end up with quite a pile of grass clippings. So that's the cut done. I mean, the lawn looks okay at the moment as long as you don't get too close and you squint fairly heavily as well. What's interesting though is just after the cut, just point out a couple of things with my Poa annua. Come and have a look at this. This is classic annual meadow grass and it grows sideways, so it doesn't matter what lawnmower you have, you just go over the top of it and it all seems to come down to one little root at the bottom. This is probably one of the worst bits that I've got in the grass actually, in the lawn. But I must admit, a year ago most of my lawn was just full of this. In fact, my lawn a year ago was probably 85% annual meadow grass. Now, there's not any particular weed killer you can get to kill off annual meadow grass. So the best thing to do is to take it out and reseed that area. So what I'll do is I'll put some topsoil in this, mix with a bit of compost, put some seed in, just fill that hole. And hopefully I'll get rid of that lump. Right next to it over here we've got exactly the same. This is the problem, it just sits flat with the lawn and basically takes out the normal grass around it. So you never quite cut it properly because it grows sideways rather than up. Not so bad at the moment, but when it seeds, it's going to reseed itself for next year. So best to cut it out now. I'm trying to get rid of it. Oh, look. Nothing like a bit of brick in your turf and lawn makeup. You can see I live in a new house, can't you? That's the sort of challenge I'm having. Anyway, that's enough about annual meadow grass. I'm going to do an episode all about it in a few weeks' time. Anyway, I think we better get back and try to solve this hole in the lawn before I fall over and break my ankle. So I can sort of see what I'm dealing with here now. It's probably about 1.2, 1.5 square down to about 5 inches, 125. So rather than just fill this in, what I'm going to be doing is cutting chunks out the turf, taking the turf off, filling the hole and then putting it back. I'm going to need to cut more turf. Great. You can see by the way this board is leaning the depth of this hole and the extent of it until it gets to level ground. I'm using a board here just to make the cut straight, but you don't necessarily need to. With the board out the way, it means I've got room to really press down this cutter full depth of at least the bottom of the grass roots. I cut all the way until I feel that I've got to level ground. I do this in strips slightly wider than the spade that I'm going to use, so I can get it underneath without disturbing the adjacent strip, all the way out to the edge of the depression, and then essentially cut a perimeter as well. Each section that I'm cutting here has to really be small enough to be able to lift and get onto a spade without it collapsing. So I cut these strips up into manageable lengths, and then lift them out one by one, like creating a jigsaw puzzle. Because of this, I'm quite careful to place them in the same order and orientation as they were in the lawn. So when I come to put them back, they'll naturally fill the space and fit together just like a lawn jigsaw puzzle. Potentially, if you had a turf cutter at this point, it could help, but the depression is so low, whether it would really cut into the middle of this hole, I don't know. Then it's just a matter of continuing and cutting these sections into manageable pieces and taking them out and putting them to one side in the right order so I know how they go back. I'm using a topsoil here that I've used quite a few times before that always seems to be the right sort of moisture content and quite fine, which means it's really easy to work with. And it says it's free of weeds and any other seeds as well, and it's well priced. So I'm using the topsoil to essentially create an additional layer underneath the turf just to bring it up to the right level. The timber here not only shows me what level I need to be at, but it also sort of helps tamp it down and get it flat as well. It's really important that when you're using this topsoil, you compact it, because it will compact in time with rain and just by foot traffic. So it's important to compact it now so it doesn't compact in the future, else in some ways you're just wasting your time. You're going to end up with another depression that shows itself over the next few weeks. So you can see me here forcing it in and compacting it as hard as I can, so there's less chance that it does over time. Each section that I've cut is actually uneven in depth because I haven't got a turf cutter. The depth of each section varies from front to back and side to side. So there is a little bit of playing about with moving topsoil so the thing fits back in place evenly and at the right level. With time you tend to get there, and using the timber as a guide is really quite important. This is one of the sections that I didn't fully cut, so the strip on the right hand side is still connected to the rest of the lawn. So I can just elevate it and put in whatever topsoil I think I need underneath. So one end doesn't change while the other end maybe comes up half an inch to an inch. Once again though, it's really important to compact that material underneath, else it's only going to compact in the future. walking over the topsoil is probably the best way of compacting it, or if you've got a hand compactor rammer type thing. I'm just doing it with my knuckles here so I don't have to get up and down continuously, because there is a certain amount of compacting and adjusting and compacting, adjusting. But I think just using my knuckles with thin layers is probably enough for it not to move again. This is definitely one of those jobs that has a learning curve, and once you sort of work out your system and you get into the swing, things do go faster and you tend to end up more accurate. So it doesn't take long before I'm actually taking out the last section of topsoil because I've got too much in it, and replacing that very last patch. Any gaps between the pieces I've just replaced, I'm filling with the topsoil, and I'll be seeding as well, just so in the next couple of weeks they'll just disappear. There's a certain amount of stones and debris left on the surface, so a quick light rake just gets everything out the way. And the proof of the pudding is using my straight edge, where actually you can see that within maybe half an inch the whole area looks pretty flat. In fact, the one thing I did find was flattening this area does show up another area literally just adjacent to it, which I just didn't even notice when I started, but now is sticking out like a sore thumb. With the turf back in place and a little bit of seed added to all the gaps, I give it a good water just to bed it in, and if we have good weather over the next couple of weeks, that will all tie back in together quite nicely, and I'll just have to keep it a little bit moist over the next week or two, just so it helps that along. So there you go, job is finished, and it looks a lot more level than it did when I started, I must say, especially this bald patch here, that it does actually look the same level as the grass rather than being sort of 5 inches lower, which is where we started out. It's not 100% perfect, obviously, because I've taken up these great big squares of grass. There's gaps in between them and it's a little bit rough around the edges. Now they will bed down for the next couple of weeks, and when I do my lawn levelling across the whole of the lawn, that should take out any of those problems, and I should finally be left with something looking quite good as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please check out the other ones on my channel, and please subscribe, and please go and have a look at our Patreon page where there's extra content and extra videos every week as well. So till next time, I'll see you then.